She's all cozy. Okay. So you can't tell me what A, B, and C are, by the way, until it equals 0. So in this particular problem, number 1, you're not going to tell me what A, B, and C are because this doesn't equal 0 yet. So the first thing you have to do is always, with any polynomial, going to be getting it equal to 0. And then if you try to factor and find two numbers that multiply to get 14 and add to get negative 10, you truly won't find them because it's not factorable. When things are factorable, they have nice answers, meaning rational answers. Fractions, whole numbers, those are nice numbers. Those are rational numbers. If you have to use the quadratic formula, you have to use the quadratic formula, not you choose to, you had to, because factoring didn't work. Then they're going to be irrational answers. Look at all these. They're all irrational. Radical 7's not a nice number. Radical 11's not nice. Radical 22, radical 13. So, A is what, Alexa? Nope. A is always in front of your x squared. So what's the coefficient of my x squared? 1. B is what, Angie? B is always the coefficient of x, negative 10. And C is always your constant, which is what, Morgan? 14. So now, when I do and show my work for the quadratic formula, I have a couple suggestions for you, just based on what I see as the most common mistakes. I wouldn't suggest writing negative, negative B. Think of negative B as just the opposite of B. So whatever B is, negative 10, what's the opposite of that? 10. Also, I wouldn't recommend writing down negative 10 squared because a lot of you are going to do that, and that's wrong. If anything, it's that. You follow? I don't recommend writing down either of those. Just square it in your head. What is this number squared? 100. Just write down that. 100 minus 4AC all over. And I also recommend you just double A in your head. What's 2 times A? 2. So then the next thing you want to find is the value of this. 10 plus or minus the square, and that's all calculator. 100 minus 4 times 1 times 14 is, I don't think so. So boy, calculator use 100 minus 4 times 1 times 14, enter. 44. Good? No. Sierra, you shook your head no. Oh. That's why. You thought I meant good, like as in we're done. Oh. No, I didn't mean that. I meant, are we good so far? Okay. So yeah, this is obviously not an option, and nor would you ever leave this, even if it was an open response. You leave things in simplified form. Good thing we did radicals already. The square root of 44 breaks down into what? How could we break down 44 in a helpful way to take the square root? Well, 4 times 11, right? 22 times 2 is great, but do you know the square root of 22? Do you know the square root of 2? So if you don't know the square root of them, guess it's not great. 4 you know the square root of, so root 4 root 11 would change that to 2 root 11. So 10 plus or minus 2 root 11 divided by 2. Now, can I divide each of those terms by 2 or no? Well, you would never divide a radical number by a whole number anyway. You cannot do root 11 divided by 2 and tell me that that's root 5.5 anyway. You can't do that. It would have to be root 11 over root 2 for you to be able to do division there. So you can only pay attention to the whole numbers anyway, and as long as they're both divisible by 2, I can do 10 divided by 2, which is 5, 2 divided by 2, which is 1 root 11, which I'm not going to write the 1. Option 2. Okay? So A would be more the same. B is just taking those radical answers and turning them into decimals. So you'd actually, for the previous one, you'd do 5 plus root 11, get a decimal, 5 minus root 11, and round to the nearest hundredth. Okay? X-intercept, how do you find x-intercepts? Y equal to 0. So as soon as you do that, all of a sudden, this is another quadratic formula problem. Got it? Flip to the back. We have another system, quadratic and linear. Just you set them equal to each other in this case because they both say y equals. To solve it, get it equal to 0, use your quadratic formula. Just like the system we did yesterday, but on the system yesterday we could factor. On the system here we're going to use the quadratic formula. Now this system's a little different. Why? Well, the y on the second linear is not by itself already, so I can't just set them equal to each other. I also don't need to solve for y, though, either, in the second one. You don't have to do it that way. If y equals this, just plug that in for the y down there. So it's x plus 3, and then replace the y with 2x squared plus 5x minus 1 equals 6. Distribute. Get it equal to 0, use your quadratic formula. And maybe we'll start with exercise 3 on Monday. I'm not overly concerned with that. Exercise 3 at the bottom, quadratic formula. I have one quick thing, because I think I still have a minute to tell you. If you ever get something like this, can that be simplified? No. The root 7's all done. 5 doesn't divide by 2. 3 doesn't divide by 2. Actually, let me do this. This is an okay way of leaving that final answer because while the 4 can be divided by 2, the 5 cannot. But I want to tell you that oftentimes you will see this. So what did they do there to get it looking just different? They broke it up. They actually did divide both terms by 2. The 5 divided by 2 they had to keep. The 4 root 7 divided by 2 could become 2 root 7. So if you see that in a multiple choice, I don't want you to think you got what's on the left. I don't want you to think, well, the answer's not there, because it is. Let's split it up. Okey-doke. So you have a spiral, regular homework, just another Friday in Algebra 2. You're crushing it. You're doing a great job. Have a good day off tomorrow and the next 2 days, but mostly tomorrow. Enjoy sleeping in.